The first person that I told that I was HIV positive.
Oh, the first person that I told was the friends who went with me.
The first person that I told was my mom, because when I got the diagnosis when I was in the hospital, I called my mom and I said, "Mom, you need to come up here now." I said, "Mama, I've been diagnosed with HIV." And she's like, "Huh? What is that?"
A lot of times people, when they are newly diagnosed, feel that they have to tell everybody.
I didn't want to call anyone. I think I tried to call my sponsor, my best friend, or my sister. I don't remember which one I got on the phone, and I remember telling one or two of them I was positive and proceeded to fall apart.
When I first told people, it was a lot of one-on-one, and it was based on the vibes that I get from the person, as well as how much that person needed to know. The first person I told of my diagnosis was my godmother's sister, and I felt safe to tell her because she stepped up and took care of me when my mom had passed away, and she was a trusted adult in my life.
But disclosing to my mother, I regretted that. And the reason I regretted that was because the following week after getting out of the hospital, she said, "Well, you need to go to church and you need to repent." When she told one person, they told another person, and they told another person. And then I noticed when I went back to church, I started getting these looks.
I actually was an executive chef in a restaurant. I was living my best Julia Child's dream at the time. And unfortunately, I had a lot of experience with HIV and people living with HIV and the stigma and the discrimination, but I didn't think that it would impact me. So when I found out I was living with HIV, I went in and I actually told my employer because I thought they were very cool. And I told them I needed some time off to actually go get medication started and to figure out where I was at. Unfortunately, it turned out that they were not as cool as I had hoped. So I came back after a week expecting to pick back up my executive chef job. And unfortunately, they told me that my job had been re-described and that I was now going to be doing bookkeeping. And I kind of knew that it was about that discrimination, that they didn't want me around food, and I asked them exactly why, and they said that unfortunately, if people knew that they had an executive chef or anybody touching the food who was living with HIV, that they would basically end up going out of business because people would stop wanting to eat at the restaurant. And as they really graphically said, we might as well just take out an advertisement and say we put rat poison in our food, because that's how likely people will be to come and eat at our restaurant.
I'm one of the people that did not adjust to my diagnosis instantly, and I just could not deal with the shame. It took a long time to realize that I had not done anything wrong, that I didn't have a reason to be ashamed, that I didn't have to feel guilty. By 2011, I began to share with a friend here or there, and I did it as I felt comfortable. There was something that might move me that I could say it to you. I became a little stronger. I became a little better. It just was a slow process for me. And I think the process worked for me because I owned and honored how I felt.
It was hardest to tell my children because I didn't want them to worry that I wouldn't be here to help them.
I didn't tell my son, someone else told my son. Or they were spreading rumors like, your mama got that ninja, your mama got that thing. And I said, "You know what, son, have a seat." So I said, "You know what, it's true. I don't have that thing, I don't have that ninja, but I do have HIV. And my son, he said, "Mom, what is that? What does that mean? Does that mean you're going to die?" I said, "No, but I am going to live." And so I would talk to him every day, and I would read things to him, different articles about HIV, and I would show him my numbers and explain to him what those things mean and what those numbers meant and what that meant for my life. So my son is one of my biggest and greatest supporters.
Collect information is always a good thing to have educational materials, because you may need those to help the person you educating, and they may need it to educate others.
A lot of times people, when they are newly diagnosed, feel that they have to tell everybody. Take a moment, and actually more than a moment, take a week, take a month, take whatever you need to take to actually kind of come to your own peace about your diagnosis. Sometimes as women, we seek to punish ourselves for having acquired HIV, and so we tell people who we know are going to be really terrible to us. And so I try and encourage women to give themselves a little bit of break, a little bit of time, a little bit of compassion and kindness. And third of all, to tell people when I needed them to know. Not when I thought they needed to know, but when they actually needed to know to help support me. And I still think that that is super good advice, and so I give that often.
My big reveal of my status happened when I was named one of the 75 most amazing HIV positive people by HIV Plus magazine. And I was relieved because I was going to let the world know at one time, and I was proud that people living with HIV can be viewed in a positive manner.
I started telling my story, and the first time that I disclosed publicly, I did a interview on News 19, which is our local news channel. And I did a poem. After I did it, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? You know, I just literally told a whole state about my diagnosis. I said, am I crazy? And so I had people the following week, I had people coming up to me, hugging me and telling me how brave I was. And I was like, for what? They said, we saw the interview. You are amazing. You are brave. You are full of strength. How do you do it? And so I started telling my story, and I started wanting to tell my story. And the more I told my story, the more people wanted to hear it.
I was contacted by a group of ladies who wanted me to join a group of women to go to Africa and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And they said they were looking for women who had overcome something to show others that you don't have to give up on the mountains in our life. And they asked me, would I be willing to join this group? And if I did, to train to go to Kilimanjaro to climb, that I would need to be open about my status in public. And by 2011, I had begun to get better. I still lived in very much emotional isolation, but had begun the steps. By 2011, I was ready. I was tired of living. I felt invisible. I was tired of living in shame. I was tired of living that way. And I called my daughter and I said, I'm ready to go public. I don't want to live like this anymore. And I needed her permission, because when we go public, our families go public. And so it doesn't just impact us. She said, Mom, do what you have to do. I felt like I was butt naked in a car that someone else was driving, because once you say it, you can't control where it goes. It was scary, it was difficult, but it was freeing at the same time. By the time I went to Africa, I wanted to go as an openly positive woman and climb Kilimanjaro, and I made a decision when I came back I would never be invisible again. And I have not, and I've continued to be vocal and public. And what it's done for me is my world is bigger. I still see those folks in those support groups who are still fighting with it. I don't want to be limited by it. I am so glad to be living out loud And it took a while because you'd be in a room and people would say negative things about HIV and you feel like you just got slapped, but you couldn't say nothing. And I remember sitting there doing that. That would not happen today.
You're going to be okay. It's going to be tough. You're going to have to be really brave. But there are women like me who are here to help. And we got you. You got this. And we're going to all be okay together.
You might be filled with a lot of uncertainties. Reset what you know about HIV, because unfortunately the information that you and others may see is not based on facts. It's mainly based on stigma.
Just because I got a diagnosis or they got a diagnosis of HIV does not mean that they don't deserve to live. Being able to have that courage, and that's the most important thing, having courage and having knowledge, because we perish from the lack of knowledge, and just being able to, accept them as they are. And a lot of times in life, we just have to learn how to meet people where they are.